Hello and welcome to our second video tutorial for those studying 3D game design in BIFE. In this tutorial we're going to have a look at the interface, the Blender interface, and how it works and what all these different bits do, what are all the windows for, and there's a lot of them, so there'll be a good bit of information in this. So let's just start from the beginning. So File, New. So this is the default interface in Blender. So we have this small outliner that we looked at before. We can make it bigger or smaller. We'll leave it there for now. It has all of our objects listed in it. Very important window. This is our 3D viewport. This bar here is called our toolbar. If we press the T key, it will appear and disappear. You'll also see a very small there we go, plus sign if I click off it here. There's another one over here. If we press N, okay, and this is the properties of the viewport. So if we press T, we have our toolbar, and N will open and close this bar here. Now, these are really important. They have, as you work in this 3D viewport, as you edit objects, change their shape and their size and their color, etc., you will use these a lot. For example, if our 3D cursor, you'll see it's X -1, Y 0, and Z 3.8. So that's the position of this object here, this circle, or white and red circle. So as I click around the interface, you'll see its coordinates have changed. Now, while we haven't done anything about X, Y, and Z coordinates, in Blender, red is X, green is Y, and Z is blue. And if we look from the front, we press 1 and then 5 on our numpad, and we're in wireframe mode, you can see that up and down, so the vertical axis is Z, moving right and left horizontally is X, and then moving towards us and away from us, we can't see it now, it's directly on this line here moving away from us, is Y. So at the moment this is where our 3D cursor is. So if I go down here and I go 0, 0, 0, it's back to the middle. And that middle position, 0, 0, 0, is called the origin. So it's the center of the universe, this being the universe. So these bars here have a lot of very useful tools in them to change the scale and position, rotation, etc. of all of the objects that we can select in this 3D viewport. There's, like I said, a huge selection of tools here for editing and animating objects. Well, we'll get to each of them in turn, but for now we'll just look at T for toolbar and N for the properties of the viewport. Now up on top here we've got a bar that you'll see in most software. You've got a file menu, so we can save our blend file. We're not going to do that now because there's nothing in it really. This is the default objects, but this is our basic sort of bar that you'd be used to, and again we'll go through all these functions another day. But up here there are these two menus. This one here, scene, refers to this scene here. So if you can imagine, think of it as like a game level. So by default this is level 1, so I can rename it level 1. So if I wanted to have a level 2, I would press plus, and I can say I want a new one. So now there's nothing here. There's no camera, there's no light, there's no cube. We'll call this level 2. Now if I want to go back to level 1, I can just drag down my menu. I have level 1. So level 1, level 2, and we can have as many levels as we like. And we will, we'll use that quite a bit as the year progresses. So that's what this is for in our toolbar. And then this one here is the one I'm most interested in. This is a drop-down menu, and this profoundly changes all of these views, all these the interface. It completely changes where all of these boxes and menus and buttons are. So before we start changing them here, we'll just have a very quick look at what's already open. So this window here, which has the majority of or the most complicated set of buttons and sliders, etc. This is the properties window, and it's when you select an object, the properties of that object can be edited here. You'll see there's many icons here, so let's have a quick run through what these icons are for. So this little camera here at the end, when that's selected, all of these buttons are the controls of rendering. So on what is rendering? Rendering is when you want to make a picture. So if I look through my camera, I don't know if you can remember, we pressed 0 to look through the camera. Let me go into solid mode here. If I press render, I'll get a picture. Now I can save that as a picture, as a JPEG, and put it up on the internet or do whatever I want with it. I can click this button here, and if I have moved the camera, I can save an animation, and same with audio, so I can render these out. How big is this picture? Well, I can set the size of it here, the quality of it, etc., where I'm going to save it. So this little camera icon here refers to the properties of the render, of the output, if we were making pictures or movies. This next one here is our render layers. This is what we see here are the properties of the scenes. So at the moment I'm on level 1. If I change to level 2, I'm in the properties of level 2. Go back to level 1. These are my world settings. Some of these are very interesting. I can change the color of the sky and environmental lighting, etc. Then I've got the objects properties. Now at the moment our lamp is selected. Now you can see that this window has changed, so I can't see these objects anymore, even though I can still select them. And that's because we're now looking at the image editor. So we're going to go back to our 3D view, which is this bottom selection here. This is my 3D view. So my lamp is selected. So whatever object is selected, when we click on the little cubes, if I select my cube, this icon here gives me the properties like the position, location, scale of that object. There's my lamp. Constraints, we'll be looking at these. If you want to lock something's location, rotation, stop it from rotating, etc., do that here. This is a lamp, so it has a very special, its own icon here for the color of the light going off the lamp and how bright it is, etc. If we wanted to add texture, we would add it here. So texture would be like texture for a lamp is kind of unique and kind of interesting. If you had a light shining in through a kind of dappled window, like a bathroom window that had a rough surface, you could emulate that rough surface here. And then finally this tab here is physics. So if I wanted this light to bounce up and down or whirl around, I could add physics to it here. So this window has an enormous number of properties and buttons and sliders, and as we progress through the year we'll get to understand them all. And as we select each object, they change ever so slightly. So for example, I can have this particular icon here is for particle effects. If I wanted this cube to rain other cubes, I could do it, but most of them are similar. So this there are more physics options available for a cube than there are for a lamp. And then finally down here we have in the default interface this line of stuff here. This is our timeline. So if we go back to our render tab, we'll see that our frame rate is 24 frames a second. So it's going to very cheekily change that to 25 just for ease of computation. So if there's 25 frames, a frame is basically a still picture. So 25 pictures per second. This says start at 1, end at 250. So start at 1, end at 250. That's my timeline. So that is literally time passing. So if you're in a game and you want an event to happen in the game after 10 seconds, if we have 25 frames per second, then it happens after 250 frames. So we would place this marker here at 250. So we're 10 seconds into our game, and then we would set the action to happen on that frame. So this little interface here is called the timeline. Now let's go to our default menu and let's start mucking about. So 3D view full, So that's just showing me what's in the 3D view. I can zoom in and out. You can see that the camera and the light have disappeared, so I can only see objects in this view. Animation. So if I want to animate things, the interface has changed. If I want to composite, so that is merging 3D objects with 2D video, it looks like this. If I want to do the default interface, which is what you get when we open up Blender, is this one here. I've moved this a little bit, so it normally looks a little bit more like that, and this N one here isn't open, so the default interface looks just a bit like that there. Then we've got game logic, which is what we'll be looking at a lot this year. So over here we can do scripting, so we can create a new script and type code. We will not be doing that. And then down here we have logic bricks, so we can add motion and interaction and collision and scoring and variables and all sorts of wonderful things in our games. So this is game logic. Motion tracking. Again, motion tracking is part of 3D animation. If you wanted to make Guardians of the Galaxy, as I said earlier, you would use this panel here. It's for getting 3D objects to move through a two-dimensional space. Scripting is if you wanted to write custom elements for Blender. So if you had a particular, if I select my lamp here and go to lamp windows, you can see I've got a point lamp, a sun lamp, a spot lamp, a hemisphere, and an area lamp. That's all the lamps I can have. There's 5 of them. If I had some sort of a neon lamp I wanted to make, so I wanted a custom element in Blender that didn't exist, I could write a script to make that new element. Or in the game engine, if there were a very complicated thing I wanted to happen, I can write my custom script here. UV editing. This is something we'll do a lot of. A UV editor is where you unwrap something. Let's do a smart unwrap. Oh, smart project, even better. So this object here has sides, so let's select a side. That one at the top. There it is over there. That's the side. That's the other side. So if I wanted to make this top square blue, and this side one red, and this pink, and this yellow, I can bring this into Photoshop, or I can color it in just here. So UV editing is for coloring in and changing the appearance of objects. And video editing. So if I wanted to edit, if I've made 3 or 4 pieces of video, like for an animation like Toy Story, and I wanted to edit them all together, I would do that here. So as you can see, the interface in Blender is quite complex. And what we'll be using mostly for the first month or 2 in the college is this default interface here to edit and create new objects. So I hope you find that interesting and not too daunting. But do feel free to change things and see what they do and press buttons and experiment. You can't break the software. That's enough for this session here, so we'll leave on this screen here, which is our default interface.